They didn't build a machine. They didn't launch satellites. They didn't launch rockets. They trained the human mind to spy across space and time. Then they classified everything. For more than 2 decades, the CIA funded experiments to determine whether human beings could access information without physical contact. Remote viewing, psychic espionage, the idea that consciousness itself could function as a surveillance tool. According to declassified records, it wasn't treated as fantasy. It was treated as a national security question. What if thoughts were never truly private? What if perception could extend beyond the body? What if consciousness could be weaponized? Buried in Cold War archives is a program so controversial that even today, the government's explanation feels incomplete. This is the story of the CIA's remote viewing experiments and what they may have uncovered. In the early 1970s, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in an intelligence war. Not missiles, not bombs, information. Then, US analysts encountered reports that Soviet scientists were investing heavily in psychic research. Telepathy, psychokinesis, remote perception. At first, American officials dismissed it. Then came defector testimony, intercepted communications, research papers emerging from Eastern Europe. The Soviets were not joking. They believed the mind could become a strategic asset. If they were right, distance meant nothing. Borders meant nothing. Nuclear silos, submarine routes, classified facilities, visible without infiltration. Washington could not ignore that possibility. So the CIA initiated its own program. It began under the codename Scanate. It later evolved into Project Stargate. The mission was simple: determine whether psychic perception was real, and if it was, exploit it. The research was conducted at Stanford Research Institute, led by physicists Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ, serious scientists, laser specialists, instrumentation experts, not mystics. They designed controlled experiments, double-blind protocols, randomized targets, sealed envelopes containing coordinates. A viewer would sit in isolation and describe impressions of a distant location. Sometimes the descriptions were vague. Sometimes they were unsettlingly specific. One early subject, Ingo Swann, was asked to describe remote sites he had never visited. He produced sketches resembling bridges, buildings, bodies of water. Details matched with surprising accuracy. Researchers tightened controls, removed cues, increased randomness. The results did not disappear. Then came an experiment that would become legend within the program. Swann was tasked with describing Jupiter before spacecraft had provided detailed imagery. He reported ring-like structures and violent atmospheric activity. Months later, NASA's Pioneer mission confirmed Jupiter possessed faint rings and massive storms. Supporters pointed to this as validation. Skeptics called it coincidence. But inside intelligence circles, interest intensified. The CIA and later the Defense Intelligence Agency began recruiting additional viewers. One was Joseph McMonigal, a decorated Army intelligence officer. He had no prior belief in psychic phenomena. Yet under controlled conditions, he produced descriptions that analysts deemed useful. He was tasked with locating foreign military targets, describing suspected facilities, identifying hidden structures. In one case, he described a large submarine construction site in the Soviet Union. Satellite imagery later confirmed activity at the coordinates provided. Not every session succeeded, but enough were compelling that funding continued. That may be the most unsettling detail. The program did not last months. It lasted decades. Reports were generated, transcripts archived, briefings delivered to officials at high levels. If it was pure delusion, why did it persist? By the 1990s, scrutiny increased. An external evaluation was commissioned. The American Institutes for Research reviewed years of data. Their conclusion was cautious. Some laboratory results suggested statistical anomalies beyond chance. However, the phenomenon lacked consistency. It could not be relied upon operationally. The program was terminated in the mid-1990s. Officially, remote viewing did not provide dependable intelligence. Case closed. But the inconsistencies remain. Internal memoranda show that some intelligence officers believe the program had produced actionable information. Certain requests for sessions continued even after skeptical reports. If it had no value, why were tasks still assigned? Why were experienced military personnel dedicated to psychic operations? Another tension lies in the science itself. The evaluation did not declare remote viewing impossible. It declared it unreliable. There is a difference. In intelligence work, even marginal advantage can justify quiet continuation. Former participants have publicly claimed that the program was not truly ended, only reorganized, that its most sensitive aspects were absorbed into other classified compartments. There is no public evidence confirming that claim, but there is also no transparency ensuring it is false. And intelligence agencies rarely reveal the full architecture of their capabilities. The most disturbing dimension may not be whether viewers could consistently perceive distant targets. It is that credible institutions invested in testing the possibility. Security clearances were issued, congressional funds allocated, analysts evaluated psychic transcripts alongside satellite imagery. This was not fringe research. It was integrated into national defense considerations. Some researchers involved in the program speculated that consciousness might not be confined to the brain, that perception could be non-local. Those ideas drift toward theoretical physics and controversial interpretations of quantum mechanics. They remain unproven, but they were considered seriously enough to justify classified experimentation. If remote viewing never worked, the story becomes one of Cold War paranoia and bureaucratic momentum. If it occasionally worked, even unpredictably, the implications are harder to dismiss, because an ability that functions only some of the time is still an ability. And intelligence agencies do not easily abandon tools they believe offer even a small edge. Today, the official archive states the program ended. No psychic units, no classified viewing teams. But the same government once denied the program existed at all, until it admitted it, until documents surfaced, until hearings confirmed it. Remote viewing occupies an unusual space in history. Acknowledged, declassified, but unresolved. The transcripts are real. The funding was real. The skepticism is real. So is the persistence of uncertainty. If the program truly failed, why did it endure for more than 20 years? If it occasionally succeeded, how much remains classified? And if intelligence agencies once believed the human mind could transcend distance, can we be certain they stopped exploring that possibility? Because the most dangerous capabilities are not always technological. Sometimes they are perceptual. And if consciousness can extend beyond the limits we assume, the final question is not whether psychic espionage once existed. It is whether we would recognize it if it never actually ended.